What's up, 12s? It's Lucas, and man, the energy in Seattle right now is just different because every single guy on this roster is being told they have to fight for their lives this season, and while we're all looking at the superstars, there's this one name at the very end of the draft that is starting to make people whisper about a massive steal. We're talking about the final piece of the puzzle, Michael Dansby, a kid who barely made the cut but might just be the secret weapon this secondary needs to finally get back to dominance. Before we dive into why this kid is catching everyone's eye, I really need to ask you guys for a huge favor, because we are on a mission to hit 1,000 subscribers, and building this community of the most passionate fans in the world is what keeps this channel alive. So if you love the Seahawks and you want the raw truth every single day, then hit that subscribe button and let's show the league what the 12s are all about. Now let's talk about the final selection of the 26th draft, which was Michael Dansby out of Arizona. And I know what you are thinking, because when a guy goes 255th overall there, usually isn't much to talk about, but Seattle saw something special. They didn't just pick him to fill a spot, because they actually moved fast to make sure no other team could even get a sniff of him in free agency, and that tells me they see a diamond in the rough. You see, the Seahawks have this culture where it doesn't matter where you were picked as long as you can play, and Dansby is coming in with a massive chip on his shoulder, which is exactly what we love to see in the Pacific Northwest. He started out his journey as a wide receiver back in high school, where he was only a two-star athlete, so he has been overlooked his entire life, and that transition to cornerback only happened when he got to San Jose State. This is where things get really interesting, because he didn't just survive the move to defense, but he actually thrived, and you can see that wide receiver background in the way he tracks the ball in the air. By his final season with the Trojans, he was putting up 37 total tackles and 7 pass breakups with 2 interceptions, which proves he has that natural ball hawk instinct that we haven't seen consistently in a while. When he transferred to Arizona, he was looking for that NFL-level evaluation, and he got it because the scouts started seeing a guy who understands how receivers think. This isn't just a technical player, but a guy who is using his past to predict the future on every single snap, and that is why I'm getting so hyped about what he could bring to this training camp battle. And here's the thing that really separates the guys who just make the roster from the guys who become legends, because Michael Dansby isn't just happy to be here, and he has shown a level of growth that is honestly pretty rare for a 7th rounder. But then you look at his tape from the Holiday Bowl against SMU, and you see him snagging that interception in the second half, and you realize the stage is never too big for him, and he just has this way of being in the right place at the right time. Now it gets interesting when you look at his actual stats at Arizona, because while 19 total tackles might not jump off the page at you first, the 10 pass breakups and 2 interceptions show that quarterbacks were genuinely afraid to test his side of the field. Let me explain why this matters so much for our defensive scheme. Because we need guys who can disrupt the rhythm of the game, and even though he wasn't a high-volume playmaker, compared to some first-round picks, he has this internal clock that just works. The way he reads the quarterback's eyes is something you usually can't teach, and he has this high football IQ that allows him to react before the ball even leaves the hand. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you he is perfect, because he definitely has some flaws that the coaching staff will need to iron out if he wants to survive in this league. He isn't the most refined coverage player yet, and sometimes he gives up way too much space to receivers, which is a dangerous game to play against the elite talent in our division. He doesn't have those lightning-fast twitches or the cleanest sharp turns when he is shifting his weight, and that can lead to some separation issues if he gets caught flat-footed. But then you see his instincts kick in, and he makes a play that leaves your jaw on the floor, because he just knows where the ball is going. It is a cinematic transition from a kid who was just trying to find a position to a man who is now fighting for a spot in the greatest secondary tradition in NFL history, and I truly believe his ceiling is much higher than anyone expects. When we look at what the competition actually looks like for this upcoming season, it is clear that Dansby is entering a literal war zone, because every single defensive back on this roster is tasked to step up and contribute. The pressure is on, and the coaching staff is looking for anyone who can provide that much-needed depth and versatility, especially when the injuries start to pile up during the grind of a long season. Now let me tell you why Dansby might have a secret edge over some of the other guys like safety Bud Clark. Because while Dansby isn't the most physically gifted guy at 5'11" and 185 pounds, he is a natural cornerback through and through. That gives him a massive advantage in the slot where things happen fast, and you need that specific cornerback footwork to survive against the shifty receivers that teams love to put inside. He has played all over the secondary during his time with the Wildcats, and that flexibility is exactly what our defensive coordinator craves, because he can be a boundary corner or move into the nickel spot without missing a beat. There are going to be situations where Dansby is actually more valuable at the slot than some of the other rookies we brought in, because he understands the angles and the spacing required to shut down those quick crossing routes. The slot cornerback position is where I think he could truly thrive and become a household name for the 12s, because it is one of the hardest spots to play in the modern NFL, and he has the speed and the brain to handle it. You have to be a special kind of athlete to play inside because you don't have the sideline to help you as a defender, and you are basically on an island with the whole field open for the receiver to break either way. This roster battle is going to be one of the most intense things we see in training camp, and I'm telling you right now that you should not count this kid out just because of his draft position. He is a fighter, and he has been proving people wrong since high school, and that kind of energy is infectious when you get into those hot August practices where everyone is tired and looking for a way out. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, because seeing a 7th round pick with this much potential just feels like the classic Seattle way of doing things, and it reminds me of the days when we were building the foundation of something legendary. Look, I know he has a long way to go in terms of his development and becoming a truly capable NFL player, but he could literally learn more in these next few months of off-season work than he has in his entire collegiate career. The biggest plus side here is that he doesn't need to be a superstar on day one, because we just need him to be consistent and show that he can handle the speed of the professional game. I'm honestly a little worried about those sharp turns and the way he shifts his body, because the elite receivers in this league will eat you alive if you aren't crisp with your movements, but the instincts he possesses are something you just can't buy. He has some major obstacles to climb, and he has to grow into an extraordinary coverage player if he wants to stay on the active roster, but the consistency is already there. I could honestly see him spending a year developing on the practice squad, which might be exactly what he needs to refine his technique and get stronger in the weight room before he really unleashes his full potential. It is all about the long game with a player like Dansby, and if we are patient, we might be looking at the biggest steal of the entire 2026 draft class in a year or two. The urgency is real though, because in this league you don't get many chances to prove yourself, and he has to make every single rep count starting from the first day of rookie minicamp. I love the grit and I love the story, and I think he perfectly reinforces that narrative that in Seattle you earn everything you get and nothing is ever just handed to you. At the end of the day, it all comes back to the identity of this team and the culture we are trying to build under this new era of Seahawks football. Michael Dansby represents hope and the idea that it doesn't matter where you start as long as you have the heart to finish strong. We have seen players like him come through this facility before and leave as champions because they understood the grind and they embraced the pressure of playing for the loudest fans in the world. I want to see him push the guys ahead of him, and I want to see him make it impossible for the coaches to cut him when the final 53-man roster is decided. This is what being a fan is all about, and it is about finding these stories and riding the emotional roller coaster with these players as they chase their dreams. Thank you guys so much for being part of this journey with me and for helping us get closer to that 1,000 subscriber goal, because your support is the heartbeat of this channel. I want to hear from you in the comments, so tell me, do you think Michael Dansby is a future star or just another training camp body? Because I read every single one of your thoughts. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed this deep dive, and stay tuned, because the off-season is just getting started and we have so much more to cover. Take care of each other out there and stay loud, because we are the loudest for a reason. 12s.